brand is not what you say about you anymore, but it's what Google says about you. So as much as we like to believe that the way things look is fundamental, it's only one part of it.
You can't say what your brand is. Your brand is just what everyone else thinks it is. All you can do is hope to align your expectations with theirs. So, you know, what the mob says is what it is.
And what we talk about is something called coherent inconsistency. So rather than a matching luggage approach, it's about recognizing what the brand represents, how it feels, what it does, rather than just what it looks like. So for Honda, for example, rather than, there are some elements that remain the same, but rather than having a set of brand guidelines, what we tend to have is a set of questions.
You know, consistency on its own, which is what everyone's banging on about, is actually a not desirable factor. People don't desire consistency, as it says in the notes. No one fell in love because they said, "Oh, she's so consistent." They fall in love because there are a million experiences, a million things you do together that add up to falling in love.
I'm not going to bore you with guidelines, but I think everyone in this room will be familiar with brand guidelines. At O2, we have a lot of them, but the basics are crucial. We have a logo, we have a font, we have some blue, and we have some bubbles. Every single piece of communication for O2 needs to have these factors.
So I'll go further and say that logos cannot do anything interesting anymore and still functionally work.
The brand needs to survive the absence of the logo, but nobody is talking about surviving the absence of a color scheme in the typography. And because the brands are rolled out of very different environments, you rely on the color scheme and the typography to get the brand across rather than the logo.
Some typefaces are feminine, some typefaces are masculine, some typefaces are young, some typefaces are old. There's an actual age and sex to the typeface, believe it or not.
But type has always been tied to technology. It's always been connected with restrictions and freedoms that new technology brings along. So with the linotype, typography was specifically restricted there. Now on screens, typography is specifically restricted. So those technologies so impact the development of type.
The divide and the gap for a developer is getting broader and broader, and yet for the user, the line between devices is now completely blurred.
If you look at the iPhone and the iPad and products that are out now, you look at them as similar because, well, they behave similarly. That there's a message to the way they behave. It's not to say that every app is identical, but they behave similarly. So you're running on an iPhone, and when you run on the iPad, the apps sort of do the same kinds of things. It's a message of its own. So your brand carries through in its behavior, exactly what you're talking about. Now, it doesn't mean that they all need to rigidly line up and look like Windows used to have all their apps looked identical. That's not what we're seeing. It's much more of a comfort through predictability and a brand through behavior.
When doing mobile advertising, it's absolutely key to have a mobile site. If you click on a banner and it takes you to a website that is not mobile optimized, that is very bad practice.
And then finally, let's get some kind of digital DNA that understands that, and an ecosystem that understands that, so that we don't have brand over here, advertising and marketing over here, development over here, design industry over here. Actually, we all have a shared agenda to pull this together and kill those old-fashioned brand guidelines that we've been wrestling with for centuries.